Hello, everybody. This is Joshua Hatton with One Nation Under Whiskey podcast. I am rejoined. As
always.
As always. Well, I can't say as always because last episode of One Nation Under Whiskey, which is our podcast, I welcomed the one and only Jessica Rabbit Lomas to the podcast, and we talked about, that was our Thad Vogler episode, which was...
It was indeed.
I've got to tell you, Jason, so here, really quickly, before we jump into everything, because there's, like, you went away, you were in the wilderness, you were saving the world.
Literally wilderness.
I don't know what I was doing, but anyway.
Pining.
I thought you were pining. Pine, oak.
Oi! A forestry joke to begin today's episode.
Yeah, I figured I'd just throw big wood right at you.
For the first time.
So Jess and I got together to do the Thad Vogler episode, and your interview with Thad was just... God, I can't believe I'm complimenting you like a minute and a half into this, but it was remarkable. And in part because Thad is a wonderful human being.
Isn't he?
But the rapport that you two had, and it was just so clear how invested in the book you were, just shone through so wonderfully. And I felt like shit because I was only maybe a quarter way into the book, as per usual, right? Like, I'm a slower reader than you are. You read a book
I like your
an
per
hour.
usual. I'm impressed it's a quarter.
Go easy. And
quarter of the way through the title. So far, I've got by the. I'm waiting to see what the by the is. What are they by?
Well, because then you got to go to the next line, and that becomes problematic. And Jess was about halfway through the book, and so I vowed to myself. I said, Joshua, get this book through Audible. Get it on audiobook. And so I did. And
on you. Who narrates it? I always ask you that question. You're always saying to me, I listened to such and such a book on Audible, and I always say to you, Joshua, who narrated it? And you always say, give me a second. And then you pull up your phone and you start looking up your Audible account. And then we go quiet for a few seconds. And then you tell me, Jason, that was narrated by
Alexander Cendese. Cendese, who's really quite excellent. So, well, he's excellent and he isn't.
How is his Mark Watt accent?
We haven't gotten that far yet. We have not gotten that. So right now we are in Gascony. We're still in France. So I'm as far into the audiobook now as basically I was into the book itself. But it's so nice hearing the inflection and hearing French words being spoken properly, when I try to absolutely massacre them.
Wait till he gets to Scotland. Who knows what the narration will sound like then.
But there's certain words... Like, for instance, the book opens up with that poem that includes the work by the smoke and the smell and the blah, blah, blah. And in that poem, or as you would say, poem, the word poutine is supposed to be in there. And I think the narrator says poitin. So it's like there's certain instances where it's obvious that's, he doesn't know the word, and that's cool. But then when he gets into the French, he's like on top of his game. And I really love the way in which Thad not only describes situations, but describes people. He really paints a picture in a remarkable way and doesn't hold back when I think sometimes, does that person want to be described in the way in which that person's being described? But
as I covered with him in the interview as well, is... he describes himself in ways where, as a reader, I would take pause and say, whoa, do you want to be saying that about yourself right now? Like, tamp it down a little bit. And he still remains fully committed to describing his own foibles and his own tantrums. It's, as I covered with him in the interview, like, it's so honest. And knowing some of the people he's writing about and how true he was to the people I know that he's writing about, it gave me confidence in the people I don't know who he's writing about. I bet that's pretty spot on there, given what I know from these others. So, it's well worth your time, well worth listeners' times. I sincerely thank Jess for sitting in the hot seat across from you and getting out a holiday edition of the podcast. And I'm very pleased that I could still be present in that episode while fanboying over Thad Vogler, who is just a delight, an absolute gem. And he and I have been having some fun together. He also, I sent him separately, as a thank you for his time, I sent him a bottle of our French brandy, our 1989 French brandy. Right. He was very appreciative of. And I said to him, look, you know this category inside out and back to front. Joshua and I make no claims to be cognac or Armagnac experts. Mm-hmm. We just like the flavour profile. And as Scotch drinkers, we thought it really resonated. And he was very complimentary. He had opened it. He had shared it with friends and with staff at Bar Agricole. Oh, wow. And said it was one of the more interesting things that had come across their door frame in many a month. Okay. And then he apologized in case that was damning with faint praise. Yeah,
I was just going to ask how he's using the word interesting.
And he said, to be very clear, I loved it. I really loved it. Obviously, it's telling a different story than the products he's in pursuit of or the products he's releasing, which is why we've always said, there's plenty of room in this releasing marketplace. Mm-hmm. We've all got different palates. We've all got different interests. There's many, many different things we're putting out into the world. So I told him I wasn't worried about the damning with faint praise. The fact he said it was interesting, gosh, if you and I are known for nothing else than putting out interesting single casks, I think that's a success.
That is an okay thing. And for our listeners, I think we've got a few bottles remaining on our website. So
we do indeed. It's actually not that many, but we do. We definitely have bottles on the website, which was the goal. We have succeeded, but please go buy them.
Yeah, there you go. So Jason, this trip you took out to the Selway Bitter Root, which is in Idaho?
I think you will find, good sir, that Idaho.
Like I said, Idaho. And
honestly, I thought you were doing a portmanteau with like Utah and somewhere else, and I was trying to work out which states were in the portmanteau.
No, I was calling you a bit too sexy for your own good. But this is now this this is now this.
I'm trying to work out what a bit too sexy for your own good means. But anyway, carry on.
I don't know. I'll let you fill in the blanks. It can mean whatever you want it to mean. It's like Smurfy. Did you have Smurfs growing up?
Second year. Oh, very much so, yeah. I think the Smurfs are European.
I'm a peon?
Oh my God. Please continue.
So, this is now your second year where you're at the Frank Church Selway Bitterroot, clearing trails, being in the wilderness, not having a single bit of mechanics, electronics, whatever. But this time around, you brought your son with you to help along. Could you I'd love to hear from a father's perspective how all of that went, but just in general. I mean, I know you loved the last trip. Like, how did this one go?
Yeah, it was another excellent one. Just to be clear, so the Frank Church Wilderness exists within the Selway Bitterroot. And so we were actually working on a trail called Sulphur Creek, and Sulphur Creek was right beside us. very, very good news is I'm not entirely sure how Sulphur Creek got its name. It is a delightful creek that has beautiful clear water running in it that does not smell like sulphur in the slightest. So all good news there. This was actually the first time the group had returned to the same spot, and so we actually continued clearing from where we had stopped last year. We moved our base camp up 2 miles to just before, maybe a quarter mile before where we stopped last year, at a tangle of brush and fallen trees that you couldn't even see the trail. It was an absolute nightmare underneath. And I've spent a year thinking about getting back there and untangling it, and that was first day back this year was untangling it, and it was a shit show. It really was. We ended up clearing 2.5 more miles of trail. Last year we had cleared 550 trees. This year, by estimates, we cleared 800. We were sometimes a larger group than we were last year. Last year we were 10 at our max. This year I think had 13 or 14 on one day. That was even more intense than last year. You're posing a question, yes.
So you say you cleared 800 trees. Like, how big are these trees? How many rings are we talking about?
So it depends. So some of them are 20 years old and actually growing out of the trail and need to be cut and removed. And cutting it, a 20-year-old. I'm currently blanking on the name that Uncle Carl taught me while I was on the trail with him. Lodgepole pine. Clearing a lodgepole pine at 10 years, 15 years, 20 years takes 10 seconds. It is incredibly soft bark. You can do it with a single handheld saw and get it removed from the trail. So you can rack up a fair number of trees when you're clearing them in 10, 15 seconds. The oldest tree we cleared last year was 253 years old.
Wow.
Already fallen. That's not us cutting it down. It's being cleared from the trail.
You're not monsters.
Because it has fallen across. We are not monsters. Thank you for saying that. This year we had a tree that to our best estimates, the rings weren't entirely clear in the center. Looked like there was some kind of rot in place. But this tree was 300 plus years old. And again, it had come down, as many as 20 years ago, in what we assume was the last forest fire to go through there. And then that we actually cleared that tree in 40 minutes. And so Kai and I, so Kai, my 16-year-old son, who was out for the first time, he and I had taken the first cut on it. So you go, a couple of feet, sometimes 3 feet to the left of the trail, and then you're going to go another 2 or 3 feet to the right of the trail, and you're going to do a second cut over there. And you're going to clear this rather large tree out the way. Lying flat on the ground, it probably came up to my hip.
Wow, that's massive. So you get, wow, okay, there you go.
Right,
yeah.
Right. And so that's where we're using the crosscut, which is depending on the crosscut you have, is an approximately 6 foot or 2 meter saw. One person on one side, one person on the other, and you just saw back and forth and back and forth and back.
So these are the saws that people, when they go to their nearest antique shop and they find the old timey saws from 18 whatever, that's what you're using.
Yeah. So I found this out on this trip. The last crosscut made in America was made in the 1950s.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
Yep.
So you're actually working with vintage equipment as well.
Exactly.
Holy cow.
Tons of fun. And so Kai again, the 16-year-old, my 16-year-old who you're asking about, is already very much into tools and sharpening tools and does a lot of local sharpening of knives and garden tools and things like that. And he actually purchased a new quote-unquote puck to take into the wilderness so that he could hand sharpen axes and some of our other blades that we had out there. He was not allowed to touch the crosscuts. You have to be certified to sharpen a crosscut, which is the 6-foot 2-person saw. So he wasn't allowed near those, but he has every intention of getting certified, so that he'll be one of a handful of people in the United States certified to sharpen a crosscut.
Because the teeth on a crosscut, they're almost, each point has, well, I imagine they kind of differ, but the ones that I saw, if memory serves, each tooth had 3 teeth on it.
In a sense, they're it's not like the saw you use in your garage to cut a piece of wood, right? It's each saw tooth is doing a different job, and they're different lengths and they face different directions. It's the real deal. You got to be careful with them. We're actually not allowed to handle them without gloves on, and we only ever handle them with gloves on. And helmets. We wear helmets too, all the time. Never miss a helmet. Moving on. Kai had a blast. He was setting fires. The weather wasn't great. We had a lot of afternoon thunderstorms. We would get some decent mornings. We would get some good work done. And then we were seeing thunder and lightning. Not every day, but a host of the days that we had. One of the days I had to hike, 2 miles back from the work site, back to camp. And it was just bucketing down, absolute bucketing, and I was soaked. I had rain gear on. I fell 3 times.
I'm not laughing with you, Jason. I'm just laughing at you.
Just happens. You know, you're on a trail. It's got fresh cuts on it. You're trying to clamber podcast over wet stones, and you lose your footing and down you go. So. On one of the days, actually, on a dry day, I was walking back and I was a little bit tired, and I was not too far from base camp, and I was trying to adjust one of the straps because we would wear our rucksacks, so you can put tools in your rucksack.
Sure.
And I was adjusting my rucksack, and at that, a former piece of wood, maybe 12 inches, 20 inches long, kicked up and blocked the foot that was on the footfall. It caught my toe, and I couldn't put my foot down to complete my step, and my hands were attached to my straps that I was trying to fix, and I went down like a sack of potatoes on my right side, landed on my right shoulder. Timber. And I don't know if I broke a rib or I've bruised a rib, but I haven't been able to cough or sneeze fully since. And so that was a little bit of pain.
So you still feel it pretty hard?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's going to be 4 to 6 weeks of your life,
That's
sir.
what I told myself. That's exactly what I told myself.
So listen, final question for you before we move on to really, why we're here, to introduce listeners to our good friend Bikram Singh, to talk about independent bottlings and talk about DTC. And maybe you have more to share as well, but I had a very specific question for you. Again, as a father, how did Kai feel about not having a phone? Like, was there like a detox period?
Yeah, he loved every second of it.
Did he?
And this is a kid who, when he is home, asks for his phone and wants more things on his phone than we are comfortable allowing him. He didn't even think about his phone. Oh, wow. He was too busy chopping firewood, digging latrines, putting up tents, sharpening axes, setting fires in the rain. He also, again, to bring up Uncle Carl's name, he was trying to set, and this might not make sense to a lot of people, but he was trying to set an East Coast fire in the Pacific Northwest. And Uncle Carl, who's from PA, who's from Pennsylvania, and has lived in the Pacific Northwest now for, 2 decades, maybe 3 decades, took Kai aside and was like, hey, dude, I know you're building an East Coast fire. I know what your East Coast fires look like. You need to be building a Pacific Northwest fire. And here's what you need to be using, and here's how you need to set it up, and here's how you need to, catch a light to it. And, throw in the rain and you're just adding layer upon layer. Sure. But you could tell in that moment, Kai was kind of like, okay, I'm here to learn. Okay.
That's awesome.
And now he's got, setting a little East Coast fire under his belt. He's got setting a Pacific Northwest fire under his belt. And we'll see what happens when he goes to the Southwest, where the goal is to not catch things on fire. So. We'll see what that looks like. I do want to say one more thing, as you say, before we throw it over to Bikram here and your interview with Bikram. But the work that we do, we are called the Whisky in the Woods Group, but we do this work with the Selway Bitterroot Frank Church Foundation, and one of the things that they're always in need of as a foundation looking after wilderness is charitable contributions. And you and I, as a company, put out a collaborative bottling where we had raised $4,000 for a SBFC that was very well received and very well spent. And on one of the days, we actually had the new leader of SBFC out with us. Okay. And he and I were starting to brainstorm some ways to raise cash for the foundation. And Moscow Jim, who is president of the board over there, has he and I have been chitty-chatting, as I like to say, about ways to do it as well. One of the ideas that we're still floating is, could we take a group of SCN folk out into the wilderness and put in some time out there and do some whiskey in the woods out there? I know we've got members who listen to me talking about it, who have asked me follow-up questions about being out there. And I wonder if there's a potential for a Single Cask Nation group that you and I could be out there pouring whiskey for people and putting in some work during the day. So if anybody is listening to this and is interested in that idea, drop a note to us, info@singlecasknation.com. You could also use questions at onenationunderwhiskey.com. No E in any of that. There is an E in questions. There's no E in whiskey. But if that is of interest, we would be selling tickets to that. And then Josh and I would be putting our heads together to come up with some fancy pours that maybe don't exist in a greater world. So I think there would be enthusiasm there. I know the success we've had with Giving Tuesday, and I know the generosity of spirit that exists amongst our members. So that'd be kind of fun. I also wouldn't take it off the table for anybody who wants to join us internationally as well. If you want to fly into the Pacific Northwest, SeaTac is right there. If you listen to the podcast and you want to come join us, we could sell tickets there as well. So there you go. It's all possible, Joshua. Oh, hell, I'd even get an idea to take recording equipment and do a little bit of daily recording, get people on wax about what they've thought about their day in the wilderness.
But we can't do that, can we? In the wilderness?
Yeah, we're not allowed. Yeah, we're not allowed to like roam around on ATVs and what have you. But yeah, some people solar power their phones so they can take photos.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Right, but they're not making phone calls because there's no signal, which is magnificent. But yeah, people do like to solar power their equipment. Which
okay. Oh, there you go. Oh man, this I'm loving the idea of this. So cool.
Right.
Yep.
Right. There's some fun to be had there, and then obviously, we've done it plenty, but another collaborative bottling would make sense as well. So.
Only makes good sense. Yeah.
Right. So SBFC, Selway Bitterroot Frank Church Foundation, means a lot to me, means a lot to my friends, means a lot to my kids. So it's very cool. Also, our trail leader has posted their take on our week in the woods, and we can make the link to that available on the the Facebook page or wherever people find information. Is Twitter still a thing, Joshua? I've been gone for a while.
Yeah, it's kind of. I think it's still a thing, but Threads is now starting
is amongst
to
us.
come up. So it's like when one cesspool starts to rot, why not open up another one? That's what I always say.
It is interesting. It is interesting, actually. Final word just on social media. Charlie Wartzel in The Atlantic writes about social media no longer is born or dies; it is just reborn zombie-like, and Threads is simply zombie Twitter.
It totally is. Fucking zombie Twitter, right? You've just made Twitter worse. Like, Twitter's already a nightmare. You add zombies in. Oof, it's like Pride, Prejudice, Twitter, and zombies.
There you go. Now that's a catchy title.
That is a catchy title. So I want to bring us to our conversation with Bikram because, you and I, Jason, some 7.5 years ago, had a company meeting and said, why don't we start this podcast where we're focusing on independent bottlings and independent bottlers and people that support, this thing that, is our business. And and I would say that we did a fair amount of that kind of early on, and then we just started peppering it in because the fact of the matter is the whiskey conversation is so big, and there's so many areas of interest and people to talk to, and whether it's a writer or a producer or a blender, what have you. Anyway, talking with Bikram brings us back to those roots, right? Back to the idea of independent bottlers. But this was a two-parter, right? We had mentioned in our episode with Holly Sidewand and Anthony Levinson that it would be really good to have Bikram in.
Exactly.
Because he just seemed to be the missing link when it came to talking about DTC and how one focuses their store and how susceptible one store is depending on what DTC, direct-to-consumer, could look like for them as we look toward the future. So anyway, I love Bikram, and I loved this conversation. I will let people know he was gardening earlier that day, and so he had a lot of, some of the mold, some of the like mold from the leaves was affecting his throat, and so he had a couple times where you may hear a cough here and there, but it wasn't COVID.
Nothing
it was
good
just
whiskey
gardening.
won't fix.
Oh yeah. Speaking of which, and this is one of the things, this is one of the things that I love about people like Bikram, which is people like us. You have a conversation and then something comes up and you're like, oh, okay, hold on, you got to taste this. And so we started discussing single malt whiskey from a country that I didn't think made single malt whiskey, and he poured it for me, and we got to talk about that a little bit. Like, there's some bits and bobs here. So, yeah, I think we just hand it off to me and Bikram. Firstly, Bikram Singh, I want to toast to you. Our listeners don't see this bottle.
Yeah.
But what I brought for us to enjoy while we're having this conversation is a bottle of Exclusive Malts 1985 Longmorn. And I mentioned to you before when we first started the podcast, David Stirk was our first guest.
Correct.
And when I first started with Impex, it was Ed Cole who was with Impex at the time and who was taking me to your shop. And he said, now we're going to get to this plaza and there's going to be this shop. Wonderful guy named Bikram. You're going to love him. From the outside, the shop looks like nothing special, but when you walk in, you're going to be blown away. And I remember opening that door and just turning left and seeing this wall of independently bottled whiskeys.
Correct.
And I had never seen a store like that, at least here in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like some people make a pilgrimage to Mecca, some people go to Jerusalem. Like, if you were a fan of independently bottled spirits, this was the place to go, your shop. And it continues to be the place to go to this day. But I brought this bottle because, if my memory serves, and sometimes it serves and sometimes it doesn't, but if my memory serves, I think that this was the first bottle that I bought from you, which was the Exclusive Malts 1985. It was bottled in 2013.
Right.
I started with the company in 2015.
I see. Right.
And I will have purchased it either based on your suggestion or Ed's suggestion, but I know I have a habit, and this is my dirty habit. This is every dirty salesperson's habit is, if you want to make good friends, you buy some of their whiskey. You got to support the people who support you. So
that's a good habit. Keep it up.
It's a good. I've spent a good amount of money with you.
Well, you still have this whiskey, so which is an amazing whiskey. I think, if I remember correctly, this whiskey either came out in 2014 or 2015.
It was bottled in 2013, but I think it was bottled towards the end and came in 2014.
Probably late 2014.
Could be, yeah.
And through the distribution networks, probably got to the shelves maybe in December of 2014.
Yep.
Possibly.
Yeah, it could be.
I think in the spring of 2015, it was among the top 10 whiskeys of Whiskey Advocate also, I believe.
And I started in March of 2015. So here we are. We're doing some investigative work here.
I think, it was highly, highly rated. And obviously the whiskey is absolutely phenomenal. 28 years old.
Yeah.
Cask strength. I think it's ex-bourbon, I believe.
It is, yeah. It's an ex-bourbon hoggy. I love David Stirk, but actually, sometimes he doesn't list it out. So actually, this just says, aged 28 years in oak casks. But it's a single cask because it gives the cask number. So the label is a bit confusing. But if I remember correctly, David had said this was 28 years in second fill bourbon.
Okay.
Yeah. But what a great thing to highlight that fruity Longhorn spirit.
Amazing, yeah. I mean, that's probably the second long one I had. Amazing spirit.
So this was your second. What was your first? Do you remember your first?
No, I don't. I don't know exactly what it was, but I think it was a Douglas Lang.
Okay.
Or Douglas of Drumling, as it was called back in the day. I don't know the exact.
Yeah.
You know, that was my introduction to independent bottlings, actually. Bottlers.
So wait a second. So your introduction to whiskey was through independent bottlers, or your introduction to independent bottlers was this Douglas drum?
No, I mean, being a Punjabi, I think I tasted my first whiskey when I was 5 or 6, maybe 7. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Then there was a big gap of about 25 years. Okay. So I started drinking or having beer when I was 31 or 32. So, but every time I'll smell whiskey, I'll think like I'm in the chemistry lab, you know.
Okay.
Yeah. Turpentine, gasoline, chloroform, DMG, you name it. All these chemicals come up, and I had no idea why people drank whiskey. I didn't.
Wow. Okay.
So
there's nothing pleasing to it. It all smelled medical,
it was actually
scientific. Yeah.
It was just spirity and too aggressive.
Okay.
On the nose. Yeah. Didn't really like it. The smell of it, and how it felt on the palate also, even with water. And then, I think I must have told you the story before, but 2008 or 2009, in January, somebody was launching a big brand across the world, and my salesperson from the distributor says, "Hey, Bikram, I know it is 3 degrees and the wind chill is -20, but we have this very important event in Boston and nobody's going there, and we need to support this person who has come from Scotland.
Yeah.
He is world famous. He named the name. I said, I have no idea who that is. But he goes, no, it will be a big favor. Please go, and help us out, show some support. After much hemming and hawing, I went there. It was a Tuesday. And obviously, they were like this big hall in this restaurant, and they had about 15 or 20 people. And
oh, wow. Okay.
About 20 people, I would say. 10 or 12 were from the distributor. So basically, there was not much love and a lot of empty, tables. But, beautifully, 8 whiskeys are laid out. Happened to be Glenmorangie. And there's a gentleman who comes in. His hair, much like you at that time, disheveled, and he just came in and he
Looks
goes...
like he just woke up.
He just woke up. It was windy, and he had a bottle of whiskey in his hand. And it seemed like he had just dipped in a pond, putrid pond, because there was stuff floating in it. And he said, "Would you like a swig?" I mean, I could not understand his English, but I kind of made that. "Would you like a sip?" I looked at him. I looked at the bottle. I said, "No, thank you." Then he moved to a couple of other tables, and people just said, "No, see, don't really want to taste it." And some they welcomed him, and they
okay.
And then ultimately, and I was just looking at my watch, trying to kind of figure out when it's a good time to make an exit. So they introduced him and, "Hey, welcome, Dr. Bill Lumsden of Glenmorangie, launching this whiskey," so on and so forth. And I was like, okay, fine. I had no idea who that was at that time.
Oh, okay. So you didn't even know that was potentially the person that was doing the presentation.
Correct.
You just thought it was someone offering a free drink.
Somebody who has just walked from the street of Boston, maybe a bum. That is how naive and how ignorant I was of the whiskey industry, of whiskey at the time. So we tasted, I think, the 10-year-old flagship Glenmorangie at the time, and they said, "Okay, you will get notes of honey and this." I smelled it; it was still gasoline and turpentine. It didn't do anything to me. I tasted; I did not get any of the notes that Mr. Lumsden was talking about, and then ultimately he went to, "Okay, this is what we're launching worldwide." It was Signet, and he said, "I came around with this bottle. And I had left this bottle in my trunk of the car overnight. And this whiskey is non-chill filtered. And because of that, the fats have come together and you see something floating in the bottle. And many of you did not try it because you didn't like the appearance of this whiskey. And that's why many people chill filter their whiskey and take away the fats and oils." So when he said that, I was like, "Oh, there are fats and oils in whiskey? Okay." So from there, then he said, there is a banana peel that comes from isoamyl acetate, and that's a component that sometimes is lost. So from that, I was hooked. I was like, okay, it's not only ethanol, there's something else happening, and something else is giving this flavor, and that's why it smells slightly different. And from there, that's why we met. Otherwise, we would not have never met, possibly.
So because you came from biochemistry, the world of right?
More like chemical engineering and environmental.
And so basically what he did is he took scientific terms that you knew and converted them to smells, to scents and flavor.
He gave a chemical name to banana peel, isoamyl acetate, and here we are.
Wow. Okay, so that's your introduction to whiskey. And we're talking 2008, 2009.
Yeah, it was probably January of 2009, but could have been January of 2008. I can't exactly pinpoint the date. So
you're talking about Glenmorangie, one of the most ubiquitous brands out there, behind the Glenfiddichs and the Glenlivets of the world. Independent bottling is quite a stretch from the ubiquitous Glens.
Right.
So tell me about that. What was that discovery for you?
So after this, I really wanted to know more and more about the whiskeys. And when I reached out to some of these big brands, let's say Lafroig or Macallan, they had the data of how much whiskey somebody buys, and they're not really interested in really communicating with their small store. So it was difficult to really get somebody to come and kind of educate and things like that. And they was like, hey, are you willing to take a 20 case drop, or whatever the lingo was at the time. However, I met Brad Jarvis. He used to represent few independent bottlers. I think Douglas of Drumling, Malt.
Old Malt Cask.
Old Malt Cask.
Yeah, sure.
Malt Maniacs. No, not Malt Maniacs. Malt
Man.
Malt Man.
Yeah. Yep.
So, but nobody was talking to those people. But he had all these wonderful whiskeys, and he introduced me to Port Ellen and all these. He did.
Wow. Yeah, just, here's a cheeky little Port Ellen.
And here's a 33-year-old Macallan ex-bourbon. But, he really, at that time, he and I think Randall Bird, he was associated with them somehow. Somebody well as well, I think. They basically opened the world of whiskey, of Scotch, Scotch whiskey, and talked about not only these 6 or 7 or 10 brands that anyone knew of single malts, but brands that nobody ever heard of: Longhorn, Brewall, things along those lines. And that's where I basically started learning about whiskey.
Is that part of your personality, going down this rabbit hole? You see something interesting, and you start pulling at the thread or following the breadcrumbs, because it's getting down into the world of independently bottled whiskey, and to devote a large portion of your store to it, to me, speaks of passion, speaks of something, a drive in you. So is that something you've always had?
I think so. I mean, obviously, there's some things that, we all have some certain passions, certain things that drive us. To me, if I like something, then I really want to get into details, into the nitty-gritty of things. And independent bottlings was the best format to do that. And there was so much detail. You're talking about single barrels, so many variables, really narrowed down, and you can have 2 single barrels side by side. And it's just a wonderful word, as opposed to just this mass market, even though they are single malts. Yeah. But it is really like a blend in a way, because there's a single profile coming out of that distillery. Yeah. But independent bottlings are not that. They're completely, they are from a single distillery, but they can be very, very unique. They have individual personalities. And so it was pretty interesting to me. And that appealed to me. And
So which came first then? The store with a staggering amount of independently bottled whiskeys, or the customers to purchase them?
So I have to little bit backtrack. Okay. So when we had the store, there was a place called Taunton. It's on 495 Belt, and the store was located, I used to call it Bud Country, because it was basically people were drinking Budweiser, Sutter Home,
okay. I thought you meant the other kind of Bud.
Yeah. So that was the profile. Very, very basic. Sure. At the time, Fireball had not come out, and be a force that it is, but coffee brandy was there, Rumpelmills and things like that. And that's what, by and large, people were drinking. But I had discovered craft beers and, gotten into Belgian beers, and we ended up having 400 or 500 beers or more at that time.
Oh, wow.
Brands, and deep selection of all these, and all the Belgian Trappist beers we could get. Yeah. So we're doing 2 or 3 beer tastings at the time. So we were exposing people to beers they had never tasted before.
Wow.
And
when was this?
You're talking about 2005, 6, 7, in that range. So, but the customer base
before that kind of got big, right? That was
the time it was getting craft beer in Massachusetts was getting big, and but the clientele was not there.
Yeah,
there were a few, but it was nothing like what a city like Cambridge or Somerville or Boston would have that draw. Taunton did not have it, but. That seemed to be really good beer, as opposed to this mass marketed beers, and but that seems to be seemed to be my passion.
Okay.
You know,
Okay.
what I thought was really great product, and people just need to be exposed. And the beer distributors were very good about, you know, providing samples, you know, talking about the history of the breweries, you know, why a certain glassware is needed, and so on and so forth. You know, so that is so. But I had already experienced something other than the mainstream in the beer side.
Yeah.
So when I discovered independent bottlings, it was a natural progression. Again, the customer base was not there. I know we did about 20 or 25 whiskey tastings before we sold a single bottle of whiskey.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow, that is really saying something. So, okay, so can we stick there for a second? To your memory, of those people who joined your first 25 tastings, have a lot of them stuck around? Was that the start of Norfolk Whiskey Group? And like, did they grow in their love of whiskey along with you, or has it fluctuated a bit?
It's definitely fluctuated, but 4 or 5 of the original are still around.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, one person has moved away. You know him, Steve Ventura.
Oh, yeah,
he moved to, he used to live in Taunton at the time.
Yeah, he moved down to like the Beacon or Newburgh. in New York.
Yeah. And I think he was thinking of, last time I saw him moving to California. I'm not sure he made the move or not.
Yeah,
but at any rate, so Steve Ventura he was one of the first. Mm-hmm. And not among the first, maybe a year and a half into us doing whiskey tastings. You also know Marco Acosta.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. He was part of the first.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
So some of the guys have stuck around, but then there were a few, because we moved from Taunton to Norfolk, some couldn't make the trek, but then Tom, Leston, and Regan, you know them as well.
Of course. And their dogs,
And their dogs, Brooke Laddie and Kalila.
Yeah.
I should take Brooke Laddie's full name. Brooke Laddie Blackheart. That's the full name of the dog.
Oh, is that true?
That's correct.
Oh, I didn't know the full name.
That's true.
I'll have to call it by its full name next time I see him.
Yeah, so I know it was difficult, but it was obvious to me that the product is top-notch, and it's just that the customer base is not there.
Yeah, sure.
As far as the appreciation, because it's very difficult. I use this example, and sometimes my examples are not very, very well thought of. Like McDonald's sells billions and billions of burgers.
Yeah.
And I'm sure many, many people think this is the best burger in the world, but there are enough people out there that think that there's something better can be had, more well-made, handcrafted, and stuff like that. So these independent bottlings represented that. And these big brands represented sort of the McDonald's or Coke of the world. Coca-Cola Classic, you know.
Yeah, sure. No, that makes good sense. All right, so you have your first 25 tastings. You finally sell a
Roughly
bottle.
10 to 12 tastings, maybe 25 maybe is stretched, 10 or 12. And, you know, we were not able to sell any initially.
Wow. So, but now fast forward a bit, right? And your independently bottled whiskeys have grown. You also, and I don't know if this started early on, but you've done your fair share of single barrel picks, whether it's bourbon, or you've even done a single cask nation one. There's an 11-year-old Kalila, which is a remarkable selection. Thank you again for that.
Yeah.
So talk to me about that. How did you incorporate that into your business model? So,
it just evolved into it. I think more than us going after that, it was just an opportunity was there. And the one thing that was happening at that time was whiskey was it was not really that popular, but it was still, so people who were in the industry from a marketing and sales department side, from distributors or brand ambassadors, they were more focused on the big stores. And I still remember we were trying to get a Flaming Heart, bottle of Compass Box Flaming Heart, 2012.
Yeah.
So we asked our distributor, could we have a case of that, 6 bottles? They said, no, you have not bought anything in the last X number of years. You cannot get anything.
Yeah.
So we did not get this. We got 0 bottles. So, but on the other hand, Four Roses, they were looking for people to buy a single barrel. And again, Four Roses, a very, very interesting bourbon a company. They have 5 different yeast strains, again, appealing to my the chemical
engineering,
geekiness, if you will.
Exactly,
They're going after those 5 different yeast strains. They have 2 different mash bills or 10 different recipes, and they're exploring things in a very different way compared to other bourbon makers. So that appealed to us, and they were looking for people who would be a good fit for their single barrel program.
Yeah, sure.
And so we were one of the earlier ones to latch on to that, and we thought that that'll be a good fit for us. So we picked a single barrel of Four Roses back in the day. That was our first pick in 2014.
There's a chance I may have a bottle of that.
Oh, that was a good one. It was a sleeper. It took us 4 years for us to sell that bottle.
Then I definitely have it, because I went on a Four Roses rampage for a while. Like you, one of the things that I wouldn't say struggled with, but one of the things that I tried to fight against was getting too much bourbon.
Excuse me.
Bourbon is amazing, but it has a smaller flavor profile box that it sort of sits in compared to some other spirits that will allow you to use different cask types or maturation in different countries and things like that. But I loved this idea that Four Roses had 10 different recipes. Correct. And you can explore all these things. And the bottles were $49, $59 each. And so I would just buy. There's a chance I have it and haven't opened it yet. So now I gotta check that out.
Oh, yeah. There are some people who will be really happy if you can part with that bottle.
Oh, wow. Oh, no. I'll open it and share it with them. That's what I'll do.
Of course.
See, the interesting thing about your shop as well is it's not just all geeky. You've got plenty of geeky stuff. You've got crazy mezcals. You do some really interesting rums. You started getting into Carcavelos for a bit.
Amazing
there, right?
product.
And in different fortified wines.
Correct. Rancio,
right?
And wines.
But at the same time, you've got a cooler of Natty Light, right? And you've got the minis and you've got the Slim Jims at your front desk or candy bars that I often leave with because I couldn't get dinner, so I'm going to have a Snickers, So you sort of find yourself. Do you find yourself just putting on different hats depending on who that client is? Do you look to try to convert that client who's buying sort of your your McDonald's hamburger into something a little more classy, like a Five Guys? You know what I mean?
It's a very interesting question, Joshua. I haven't really given much thought to how we approach that, but earlier on, these beers were there. People were still walking away with Bud Light or Amstel Light or things like that. They were not tasting it. I was not tasting any whiskey until 2008 or 2009.
Yeah.
So Dr. Bill Lumsden got me into whiskey, if you think about it.
Yeah.
So what we do is we do constant tastings. Thanks to you, we have done legendary tastings of independent bottling, single malt scotches, and from single malts from Israel, so on and so forth. But then everybody walking in is not in the frame of mind that I'm ready to, because it's sort of a commitment to learn about whiskey. Sherry cask, ex-bourbon, hogshead. There's so much terminology. It can be very intimidating for somebody to get into whiskey. But we provide the opportunity. But if they want a Fireball, it is there. It is not the most prominent thing. If they want Captain Morgan, they will have to ask us where it is, but it's there. But they will have to walk past hundreds of other rums and take a look at it. And maybe someday they'll get curious and say, I want to try something different. And if they want to try it, we have bottles open. About 1,500 different whiskeys, rums, mezcals, tequilas.
Wow.
And we'll share that with people. And if they like the taste, great. If not, then so be it.
Yeah.
Whenever they're ready, they're ready.
Yeah.
At least they know
that
something like this exists.
Yep.
And that's why initially there was a lot of pressure on us to, hey, what do you sell the most? Johnny Walker, Dewar's, Shivers, things along those lines. That should be, as the customer comes in, that should be front and center. But we felt differently, that this is where our heart lies. And if they want any of those brands, they're here, and we are carrying them, Lafroig, Ardbeg, all those things. They exist, but you just have to walk to them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was, my description of your shop has always been, you're going to go in there, you're going to open the door, you're going to turn left, and you're going to see a massive wall of independently bottled Scotch whiskey. You look left again, there's going to be your international whiskeys. But then walk a little ways. You got to actually get into the store and maybe look at a lower shelf, and maybe you'll find the Macallan down there. And maybe you'll find the
26-year-old Scottish oak Shivers, which is fabulous.
Yeah.
But it's there. It's on the bottom shelf. But the bottom shelf does not mean that it's a...
It doesn't mean it's bad, but your job has seemed to be to champion independently bottled spirits.
Correct.
Because people came to you who gave a shit about whiskey, you give a shit about the whiskey, and you want to share that same love.
Right. I mean, very, very passionate people like you, David Stark, Ed Cole, Sam Filmers, absolutely generous people with their time, with their product, education, getting back to you, very sincere, and the product is just phenomenal. It's the story we want to tell.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, all these big brands have millions of dollars of marketing campaigns and things like that. Independent bottlers don't have it, but the product is just fabulous. So we are one of those outposts where you can come in and, exercise some, time, and you will be rewarded with these fabulous whiskeys, not only from independent bottlings, but also from all over the world. Everybody is producing great whiskeys right now.
Yeah.
Recently we had the whiskeys from Lebanon that came in.
From Lebanon?
Yeah.
I didn't know there was whiskey from Lebanon.
Oh, yeah. Atir.
Atir. I don't know it.
They're really fantastic. You must taste some today. Yeah.
Okay. I will taste some then.
Really, really, really good.
Okay. How do you describe it?
So they have 3 different whiskeys.
Okay.
3 primarily different whiskeys. One is a blend. I think it's wheat and malt blend. The second one is a dark roasted malt.
Yeah.
So, but it is much like Signet has a little bit of that. But this one is distillation. It's basically, that sort of beer distilled. The aroma, the palate, it is. There's absolutely nothing else. It's really, really well done.
Yeah.
And then they have this really dark, concentrated whiskey, Atir, which is aged in Lebanese oak.
Okay. Never
Fantastic.
heard of it. Okay.
And also cedar oak.
Cedar
wood.
Cedar wood.
Yeah,
cedar.
Cedar
wow.
wood.
So there's got to be a really resiny kind of quality to it.
It is.
Wow.
It is very different. They're also using amphoras to age whiskeys.
What's amphoras?
Amphoras, those clay.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's what, Georgian wines, they do that. They put the wine in the amphora and then put it underground.
Yes.
Ah, okay.
Some Rancio wines might do that as well.
Okay.
And also, when they do the malting, it is sun-dried, sun-malted, if you will.
Oh.
Not by heat or steam or peat.
Wow.
So they're doing some really interesting things, and the flavor profile is fantastic, in my opinion.
See, and this is what I'm talking about, right? Something different, something interesting, and you're immediately an advocate for it, assuming it's quality stuff as well, right?
Moving right along, footloose and fancy free. Getting there is half the fun. Come share it with me. Moving right along.
Yeah, so we took a little break there. The keen-eared among my listeners will have noticed the perfectly placed, moving right along song from Kermit the Frog and Fozzie Bear. And while we took a little pause, Bikram poured me some of the Yathir Lebanese single malt whiskey, plus the single pot still, the malt and wheat mash bill, and then the dark malt, which was like the craziest, almost coffee liqueur mocha-like whiskey. And now this is the just their straight up single malt.
Right. This is 100 malt, 100% malt. All Lebanese malt as well.
Yeah, and so what we were saying is, right, and this is cool. Like, I don't have my Impex hat on right now. I'm not here to sell you anything.
Right.
I'm here as someone discovering whiskey, and you know, in my darker moments, I would just pass this up.
Oh yeah.
Like I said, in my darker moments, you know, because sometimes you're like, there's so much going on. I don't have time for this or whatever. And it's nice when you're kind of, you're shaken awake by someone saying, hold on, take a pause. This is worth exploring. And it's nice to be shaken like that every now and again.
Yeah, the first, I think the whiskey to come out of Lebanon, I think they're done really well.
Yeah. Yeah, really, really nice. So this third one that we're having is a standard single malt, and it like we were saying when we took the pause, it doesn't taste like a malt from any country we're familiar with. It's recognizable as malt whiskey, but I'd never peg it as Scotch. I'd never peg it as Japanese or Indian or Israeli, or it's
his own
Lebanese.
thing.
Yeah,
it's his own thing. It's Lebanese whiskey, really well made. And I think that's where the challenge is too, Joshua. There are many consumers, often very highly attuned to the whiskey, really super knowledgeable, but their profile is pegged to a certain distillery or a certain style. Yeah. And sometimes they're very much like this person who drinks Fireball every day or has that thing, because they can only be, I don't know if it's loyalty or their palate has that profile that can only like certain things in the mind and the palate.
Sometimes it's brand driven, right? Like that Fireball logo is kind of cool. And you see people wearing Fireball shirts, they'll have Fireball stickers on things. Like, it becomes some of the larger brands, I think, do a really good job of getting people to be brand loyal, whether it's your Macallan of the world or if you're Fireball. They both have a cool element. It's just what kind of cool are you into?
Right. Yeah, I mean, Macallan, we can all agree, makes some absolutely phenomenal whiskeys.
Agreed.
Right, over the years. And a young Macallan, an ex-bourbon, independent bottled, is really good. And even some official bottlings are excellent as well. But then what I'm talking about is some people their taste profile is either brand-driven or age-driven, or I can only drink sherry cask and I only drink Scotch, things along those lines. Yeah. But these things come along and their taste profile is nothing like those. So those folks are not able to appreciate that, I think. Yeah. Unless they lower their guard a little bit.
Yes,
right. And just say, okay, you know what? Let's kind of expand our horizon. Yeah. Talk about rums, for example, from Haiti, Clarence. Amazingly funky, different.
Crazy. Yes.
Mezcals, for example. Yeah. Almost very primitive. And, frankly speaking, many of the original whiskeys probably tasted like that. Because when was this? Like 1880 or 1884, when Louis Pasteur discovered yeast was a thing that converted. Oh, okay. Before that, any distillery that was made before that, any whiskey that was made was basically, driven by bacteria or yeast which existed.
It was just around.
Natural, in that environment. Yep. So the whiskeys probably tasted very, very different to the whiskeys we are tasting now from the same distillery, because the yeast strains were
Yeah.
absolutely different.
Yeah.
And even in our, last decade or so that we've known each other, 8 years actually, when we started, a lot of people said, yeast strains don't matter. Many of the brand ambassadors coming from
that,
Scotland,
yeah.
oh, it doesn't matter. But we know it matters. You can control it, you can modify it, you can manipulate it as to what you're trying to do, but it does matter. So similarly, these are reflecting, I think, Lebanese provenance, if you will. So they're different, and so I think it takes a little bit open-mindedness to kind of appreciate them, I believe.
Yeah, in a similar way, it's just like people getting into malt whiskey for the first time, and a peaty whiskey can be an acquired taste, and you have to be coerced into even trying it.
Right.
Much like this. I wanted to switch gears, if we could, really quickly. We tried to do it before, but then we got sidetracked by the Lebanese single malt.
Sure.
Which was a very good sidetrack, by the way.
That's good.
So, we talked about Holly Sidewan from from First Fill Spirits out of Saratoga, and Anthony Levinson from Roma, and this idea of DCC, direct-to-consumer selling. And as I mentioned before, right, you're this very niche shop situated in a state where if you wanted to sell more liquor to those that maybe live outside of state lines, you simply couldn't, because there are laws disallowing you to do so. So that's one idea behind that's one definition of what direct to consumer could be, right? Where you could ship to anyone within these United States. Then another idea of direct to consumer is where a producer would bypass the distributor and retailer and sell directly to the consumers, much like a winery could, right? If you go to a winery, you can buy bottles there. You can go onto their website; they can ship to your door. And then there are certain ways of doing DTC where you have to incorporate a retailer. So, for instance, like in Washington, D.C., you don't really need a distributor, but you do need a retailer to fulfill that order and then ship it out to the consumer. So my question for you is, well, I guess my initial question to you is, do you feel stifled in your ability to sell? What's already a difficult to sell product, and you're now situated in a state, or you have been situated in a state that makes it difficult for you to expand sales beyond, the people that can come to your store?
Well, it's a big topic.
It is.
There's so many layers to this and so many perspectives. And from my perspective, it is difficult, obviously. It's pretty difficult to, when you have to cancel orders, people have placed orders. Oh, by the way, can I get a ship to California, to Wisconsin, and so on and so forth. Just this morning, somebody from Canada, Quebec, bought a few bottles of Old Forester single barrel we had. And he couldn't pay because of a Canadian credit card, so he had his sister buy it for him, and she is going to pick up, and next time he's here or she was Canada, they can bring it over. But a lot of our consumers as well, they buy from UK shops, from Europe, and within 2 days, the product is shipped to their doorstep.
Yep.
Whereas people from there, if they like to purchase from us, we can't ship it. I'm not even talking about within the U.S., even abroad. So it is basically a difficult situation in that, and especially when it comes to single barrels. So we had Emerald single barrel, single cask last year, and there was worldwide interest in that. but we just simply couldn't fulfill the demand.
Of course.
So, those sort of things do happen.
I guess the question would be, do you want to see that change? Is there comfort in knowing that people have to come to you, that you become that destination?
Yeah, but at the same time, what happens is ultimately when somebody does that, right, it is going to be very difficult for smaller entities to exist, I think. Because then there could be just one company that could fulfill all the orders in the U.S., technically.
Yeah.
Like
an Amazon.
One Amazon,
right.
That's it.
Yeah.
Distribution in basically all across the U.S., worldwide distribution, 1 hour delivery, and you have it. So there are many ways to look at it. What we provide is education, tastings, in-depth product knowledge. So those are going to be like very localized.
Yeah.
So we do lose business, but at the same time, the flip side could be pretty detrimental also, if it is widely accepted.
Yeah,
but that's just one perspective. But when you look from a different angle, it looks very different. There's so many. That's why it's a very complex issue.
Right, because my gut would tell me that if Amazon were allowed to get into this business like they are in the UK currently, that their model, or at least typically what they would sell, would be sort of to be the online version of Total Wine, which is to get sort of, easily everybody's 10, 12-year-old spirit, Elijah Craig, all of this sort of ubiquitous stuff, because you're getting your cat food, you're getting your, shovels, and hey, why don't I just, throw some wine on there, maybe a bottle of Jim Beam or whatever.
Right.
Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't necessarily see them going after the really ridiculously esoteric stuff that you would specialize in. Like, do you feel that there are some levels of protection, or would you feel that? And again, these are suppositions, right? Like, nothing is in play, but there's a lot of people talking about the possibilities of DTC, and some barriers have come down because of COVID and things like that. Do you feel somewhat protected given your focus, or do you feel there still could be a threat?
There's definitely a threat
to players like yourself.
There's definitely a threat because we, unlike some stores who just specialize in special items, if you will, specialties. So they have complete focus on those items too. They do not carry Budweiser, they don't have Fireball. They have what they have. Yeah, it is very difficult for them, because ultimately some of the larger producers are not going to be able to basically support them, because an Amazon comes in, they are able to reach out to all the consumers across the board. They will be reduced to only supporting smaller one-off kind of things, because oftentimes these companies have multiple interests and multiple, let's say, distilleries or brands, and they would like them to carry all of them to be able to support them on the other really esoteric things. Yeah. So those things are very difficult to deal with for them, smaller. If we only focus, like for example, even if we take impacts, and we want only, let's say, 1 or 2 items, but those are highly allocated. Yep. And they're allocated to folks who support the entire line. Yes. Right? Yep. For us, our relationship is deep and it's long-standing, so it's okay. But if some random store comes in and asks you for that Springbank 27-year-old that you're still releasing or about to release, and you would be hard-pressed to support them, right? Yeah. So in that case, somebody like us, let's say we're the Amazon of this independent bottlings, will have a little bit of a leg up, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. Does it make any sense, or?
No, it does make sense, and if there's anyone that can figure out how to engage the consumer in these more esoteric things, it would be Amazon.
That's correct.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting seeing how things play out, if things play out in the way that some expect.
Yeah, I'm not sure, how things will work out, because this industry is going to go through a lot of changes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think even within that, I think we were talking about this earlier, even whiskey might be going through some, major changes, because those things tend to ebb and flow also. Different
Yes.
spirits have peaks and valleys.
Yep.
Over time, there could be a rum that comes in, or the rums get more popular, or agave spirits get more popular, things along those lines.
Yeah.
So let's see what happens.
Yeah, right. There's a reason why even in 2015 you could find some shops that had wild turkey from the 80s and 90s sitting on the shelves.
Yeah.
It's just
What was the reason? What do you think?
because no one wanted to drink Dad's drink anymore. They didn't want to drink Dad's bourbon, Grandpa's bourbon. There was more interest in vodkas and cocktails, gin. It was more drinking for a good time, followed by the line of Coke that they're going to do off the bathroom counter,
Right.
at the dance club.
Right.
And it was just a focus on what was being consumed. I mean, the bourbon industry got hit so hard, they tried to create a spirit that was mixable, that light whiskey, right? And it never really took off. And it just took a generation to pass by for people to get back into what is that handcrafted thing, or, you know what? My grandma was really cool. She dug wild turkey.
Right.
What's that about? And it's you needed that generation to go by for the grandkids to understand, oh, wait a second, that's kind of cool, right? It's kind of like people who are interested in antiques or interested in, action figures from, the original Star Wars series or what. There's a nostalgia. There's this connection to a yesteryear to it.
Right.
That I think helped bring it back.
Right.
Yeah.
So the thing about Amazon also could be, or maybe even the Total Wines, even though they're large stores, let's say Total Wine, for example, I don't know how many SKUs they have. Let's say 30,000 SKUs.
Sure.
Just
Seems
doing
like a fair number.
Okay. But still, there are enough SKUs that we have in our shop, they would not find a spot on their shelves, because the number of consumers they're looking for those products are too few for Total Wine to put them on the shelves.
Exactly. And then, add to that, while Amazon would be the one company who could figure out how to sell single casks, in America alone, they have, 200 million-ish account holders, whatever the number is.
Right.
How many bottles did you get from your first Four Roses single barrel?
Right.
you know what I mean? Like
220, 180, something like that.
Exactly. So these things can only go so far. So there's there is a bit of a protective element in that. But I would argue too. I think there's something to be said for independent shops working together to kind of fight the big box or fight the big boys coming after them. And I think back to one of the earliest things that you and I worked on, along with 5 other shops here in Massachusetts, and that was that Kilhoman single cask.
Yeah, legendary.
Right?
Legendary single cask, the sherry cask.
How unusual is it that, 6 major independent stores in a single state who are essentially competitors got together and said, you know what? Let's do this. That is a really cool thing to join forces on, to say, there's something to be said for independent shops supporting an independent distillery.
That's correct. And I think it's also very important to have that competition. It's very important to have our friends in Western Mass.
Four Seasons, Sean Berry, Four Seasons, yeah.
Julio's Ryan Maloney does a fantastic job. He has made whiskey cool here for many, many, many years.
That he has.
He's done a great job.
Yep.
Kenny Gordon does a fantastic job at Gordon's. So I think it's very important for those shops to exist, and that allows many of the great whiskeys, independent bottlings and otherwise, to come to Massachusetts because of these shops.
Yep.
If only one of them was there, it may not be an attractive destination, but now there are multiple stores, multiple owners really passionate about many of these brands, and this allows Massachusetts to become a rich area for somebody who loves whiskey. We may not all have similar interests, but overall it becomes an interesting place. So that competition, I think, is very important, and a lot of these folks, Ryan, Kenny, Sean, are doing a fantastic job. And I think it's important for Massachusetts to have that.
Yeah, Massachusetts is this secret oasis of independent spirits and like support of independent brands.
Yeah,
it's really cool to see that. I really enjoy it, and it takes that community that you're a part of to help make that happen.
Right. So I don't know if whether we walked around that question of DTC, or it definitely impacts us, especially when products come from out of state to Massachusetts very easily. Yeah. Out of the country into Massachusetts very easily, and we're not able to do the same. So that's definitely a negative impact. So if that was not there, then obviously it's more of an even playing field. Sure. Even though larger stores have a lot more buying power, so those kind of things are different. But this, it's even more of a detriment to us, smaller stores. Yeah. To be able to absorb that loss.
Sure. I don't want to end this conversation on this seemingly unsure what's the future going to look like kind of thing. What has you excited in the next year, the next 2 years, whether it's the expansion of your shop? Right now we're sitting in what's essentially a storeroom / tasting room, but is prime space to be an expansion of the shop, whether it's that or if it's a particular spirit that's really interesting you. What has you most excited right now, looking forward to the future?
Yeah, the store needs to open. We need to expand. I think we have many bottles of whiskeys which never appear on the shelf just because we just don't have the space. We have tried to take every inch and put some great whiskeys in there and other spirits, but we have run out of room. So this has to expand. So I'm very, very excited about that. Okay. It's just a matter of time. and for small business, it takes more time than less. So that's usually a challenge. Expansion is a challenge. So what am I most excited about is the amount of whiskey that is being produced all over the world. This Lebanese whiskey, the milk and honey from Israel, and also the whiskey scene in India. Yeah. The various distilleries that are propping up, led by Amrut, obviously one of my favorite distilleries. Yep. They have done such a phenomenal job worldwide. Then Indy, Surinder Kumar, again a connection to Amrut, but is leading the charge at Indy. A lot of the production side, fantastic whiskey. And so many other whiskeys we're going to see in the next few years. So that is very excited from the whiskey standpoint. But I think the world is also getting ready to embrace mezcals, which is completely different, not very easy to just like peated whiskeys. It takes a certain level of approach and sophistication and, just guts to be able to drink it the first time.
It's not for the lighthearted.
It's not for light,
Yeah,
it's just very difficult.
Yeah.
Some of the mezcals are like that.
Yeah.
Clarin from Haiti,
Yeah.
fantastic products. So some of these almost like lost products, they always existed, but they
Yeah.
existed in the periphery. They were not really in the mainstream. They're coming online more and more.
Yeah.
And people are more accepting, I think, of these different flavor profiles. We did a Baijiu tasting. It was very well received, believe it or not.
I'm sorry. I heard the words that came out of your mouth. I'm not sure I fully understand. You had a Baijiu tasting and people enjoyed themselves.
Some did. Some did. They were not as offended as they were 4 years ago. Listen, now, 1 in 3 bottles sold in the world is a Baijiu.
I know. It's the world's single most popular spirit.
Correct.
It's wild, but it's I've told you this before, and I don't mean to insult the producers of or the lovers of Baijiu, but the 2 words that come to mind when I think of it is yak sweat.
Yeah,
I don't know what yak sweat is like.
I
but
know.
I think it's like Baijiu.
Yeah, so that's the thing. There's so many different nuances, and sometimes it just takes an approach. For me, it took Dr. Bill Lumsden to kind of show me the way.
Yeah.
So you will eventually like Baijiu.
Yep. I don't doubt
You're just
it.
not there yet.
Yeah. I don't doubt it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because in the end, I mean, one of the things is as you're talking about all of these spirits, this thought kept coming to mind, which is it's just new flavors. It's the exploration of new flavors through different distillates and different material bases to create those distillates.
Right.
And the reason I got into independent bottlings, much like the reason that you got into them, is you found this rabbit hole that had, wow, I haven't tasted that before. That's interesting. Macallan usually does their stuff in sherry cask. This is in bourbon. That's interesting. You don't get to taste that, right?
Right.
And then mezcal, and then clarin, and then some of these high ester rums and pisco. And so, yes, I agree. Like, there are people like you and me, and there's more of us than we know, who will hit a wall and they say, what's new? And they just need good people like yourself or the producers or their distributors, whoever, to help sort of bring that, let it boil to the top.
Right. And you're absolutely right. You need champions, for these products. Otherwise, whether it's Lebanese whiskey, like what we had earlier, Milk and Honey, for example, also not a country that produces a lot of whiskey. Israel, they're coming out there and it's they make some really fantastic whiskeys. In last 3 or 4 years now, they've been in the U.S.
A bit more than that. That they've been in the U.S.? No, so M&H officially launched in 2020. Like their single malt whiskey. They've released spirit beforehand.
I see.
But official whiskey, 2020.
2020, okay. England, they're producing some great single malts now. Very interesting single malts. Different. They're not in Scotland. They wouldn't be called Scotch, many of them. Yeah. Right? Or they'll be called grain whiskey.
Well, they'd be single malt English whiskey.
Yeah.
Or in the case of Filey Bay, single malt Yorkshire whiskey.
Yeah, so that is fun. Yeah. That's fun because now you're taking something which is a single malt in essence, because it's made in single distillery, is 100% malted barley, but the production method involves a column and a pot. Or something along those lines. And then in Scotland, it couldn't be called single malt. Correct. It would be single grain.
They would call it grain, yeah.
But in England, they're calling it single malt.
Much like Penderyn, right? Who has the Faraday still, which is a combination of a pot, a column that sits atop it, and then a column to the side of it. Those are the European rules and regs. Yeah, you couldn't take Penderyn's distillery, plop it in Scotland, or Spirit of Yorkshire's distillery, plop it in Scotland, and call that product single malt because of the use of that column still.
Right.
Yeah.
But that excites me.
Yeah,
I mean, that's interesting
cool.
to me.
Yeah.
And also somebody who takes the time, for example, I think Cavalon uses 2 different yeast strains.
You could be right. I don't know.
I think Penderyn also, do they?
Penderyn has played around. I mean, that's a very Dr. Jim Swan thing.
Yeah.
To play around with different yeast types. I think even Spirit of Yorkshire have played around with, or use a champagne yeast for a certain dryness to it, which is back to what you were saying before, 2008, 2009, people were saying yeast strain doesn't matter.
Right.
Barley variety doesn't matter. And now what are we talking about? Different yeast strains, multiple yeast strains, different malts that Aether is using here in Lebanon.
Isn't that a smooth whiskey, though?
Bikram.
Why are you turning red?
Bikram.
Okay.
I love it. All these distilleries doing new things, new spirits, taking on popularity. People like yourself being a champion of that, of even Baijiu, Bikram.
Yeah, well, you will get there. I'm pretty sure.
Bikram, thank you so much for joining today. I enjoyed the conversation. I loved hearing your story and being able to share it, because it's not the first time I've heard your story, but I think your story is a great one. On a personal level, what you're doing speaks to everything I give a shit about, and what you do means a lot to me. So I want to thank you. And for those that are in and around Massachusetts, please come by to check out Bikram's shop, Norfolk Wine and Spirits. And as Bikram said, there's other great shops too. Check things out. But if you are a lover of independent bottlings, this really is like. It took me 45 years to get to Israel. I got to Norfolk Wine and Spirits before I got to Israel. This shows you, as a Jew, this shows you how important this is.
That means a lot, Joshua. Thank you very much. And, thank you for having me here. And also, I must say that you are a true champion also. And I have learned so much over the years from you about independent bottlings and just sharing different ideas. So cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you so much, Joshua Hatton, for finally getting Bikram to sit down and talk with us. I know how often you see him. I know how often you say, I'm driving through to Massachusetts.
Yep.
And I know how often you say, I didn't get as much time with Bikram as I wanted or I would have liked. We were doing a tasting group and it was amazing. And his tasting group is fantastic.
Yep.
And then we were on to the next thing. So... I feel a little bit like when I get to sit down with Bill Thomas, and I feel incredibly privileged to have as much of his time. Listening to you spending that time with Bikram, it's like, wow, that's kind of a big deal. How many other people, short of maybe his wife, does Bikram actually sit down and talk to uninterrupted for an hour?
He's busy for all that he does, but he's no stranger to working the register when he needs to too. It's like,
oh, for sure,
it's his shop, and he's got a small team that that they're great, but he's a busy dude. And I told him, once we press record, or maybe it was before, I don't know, but anyway, I said, this is a conversation that Jason and I have been wanting to have with you for some time. And yes, he's a busy guy, but I'm a busy guy, but here we are. We finally had it, and I think with many people, I think this is the first of a few conversations that we'll have, especially as DTC. If things do start coming to fruition and laws start changing, who knows if they do? I know there's a lot of lobbying for it from many parties. These are the people at the front lines, right? And we want to hear it from those that focus on independent bottlings or esoteric spirits. And we also want to have the people that focus on selling Bud Light and Natty Ultra or whatever.
To that point, actually, I wanted to revisit something that struck me in the interview, which fits so many of us who are into single malt Scotch, single malts, independent bottlings, is we have come to this as another passion, right? People have come from comic books. People have come from CD collections.
Yeah.
People have come from the wine world. Here we're listening to Bikram talk about having this passion for Belgian beers.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And so I don't, certainly within our cadre, within our ilk, you and I spend a lot of time speaking to people who are a lot like us, where they didn't get into this because they thought they would make their fortune on it. They got into this because they were evangelists and they wanted to tell the story of it.
Yep.
And they wanted to get other people enthusiastic about it. And I don't want to go too far into the point today. But as we look around our industry, I think the corners of our industry that make us most upset are the people who now see how to game this system and make a quick buck on it.
Yes.
And we've talked previously, the price of casks has increased. The availability of casks has decreased. The ability to use a Scottish distillery name is under attack. A number of the big producers are saying, no, you can't use our name on that. This is it's a different industry, and to hear someone like Bikram who says, these are my bottles, these are the distilleries I'm passionate about. He and I have our shared passion for Lechig, which is going through its own. It's not quite to the papification of Springbank or Ardbeg yet, but it's sadly on its way.
It's getting
right.
there.
So is Glentalker's. I look at Glentalker's pricing every day, and it just makes me cry. And here's Bikram, right, who remains passionate, enthusiastic, focused on the liquid in the bottle that he can evangelize, that he can tell other people about and get them excited. And to that point, the tasting group that he heads up, that you've poured for, is an enthusiastic group that you always speak highly of. You are always complimentary. And I don't think you have to go too far from Bikram to see why they're so enthusiastic and why they're so passionate. So, kudos to Bikram. He is one of my favorite people in this industry. And as you said before the interview, it's been 7+ years that we've wanted to get him on here. And finally, we got him to sit down long enough, and you had a chance to sit down long enough to talk to him. So kudos all around, and let's see where this conversation goes in a changing industry.
Said it better myself. Thank you, sir.
That's why I'm here. Speaking of...
All right. Why are you here? There's another reason you're here?
No. Speaking of being passionate about whiskey and whiskey worth talking about, I feel like we're going to skip right past the news segment and go into a little blind tasting.
Oh, man. I love it when great minds think alike. I mean, granted, mine's the great one, so it's nice that other minds think alike as well. Because I'll tell you, who was I on the phone? I was on a call earlier with our mutual friend Chris Udy, and he had said
Mr.
Udy, and he had said, I've stopped drinking whiskey. And I paused for a second there, and I just let that hang in the air a little bit. He says, "Let me rephrase that. I'm just taking a little break, right? I just need to take a little break from it right now." And and as you know, I mentioned this before you went off on your trip. Haida and I have been on this sort of food cleanse thing, and part of it is just limiting the amount of alcohol that I'm imbibing. And And I've just been limiting my whiskey to samples here and there, or if a party's happening, I'm not going to I want to treat myself. But anyway, I just don't touch a lot of it. And I've been really waiting to get into these two Macbeth bottlings. So yes.
We are pouring samples 3 and 4. That's a production note for Joshua to make sure he and I are on the same page.
Sample 34, is that it?
If you have poured these together, we are going to have an uphill time.
I've made sample 7. I poured these together and made sample 7. Yes, I've poured samples 3 and 4 in 2 separate glasses.
Good. So a couple of episodes ago, you and I poured samples 1 and 2. Mm-hmm. We have 8 blind samples sent to us by Elixir Distillers.
Yep.
They have collaborated with Livingston and Dave Broom and Sir Quentin Blake. We discussed Sir Quentin Blake a couple of episodes ago. Mm-hmm. And they have put out a series of bottlings attempting to capture the characteristics, the personalities, the wherewithal of those characters who appear within the famous Scottish play Macbeth, authored by, I call him Bill, you might call him William, but authored by Bill Shakespeare.
Billy. Yeah.
Right, and what a chap he is. So a couple of episodes ago, you and I spent some time with the first couple of samples. We talked through the process a lot there. We talked about this bottling as well. And we identified correctly the first 2 characters as they were in our blind samples.
That was amazing.
So
I'm not saying amazing
Yes.
for us, but yes, in a way, but I think Dave Broom did such a good job with his descriptions that helped us get there, right?
Right. Yeah, we absolutely went in depth through the descriptors and really by a process of elimination identified Seyton, Seyton, who is an Ardmore 12-year-old. Mm-hmm. And I thought it was certainly the easiest of those 2, and I will stand by it maybe as the easiest of the first, of all 8 being offered here. There are 9, and I talk about 8. 9 is King Duncan, and he is £10,000 a bottle, and we do not have a sample of him. So he's a 56-year-old Glen Grant. So I will talk about 8 samples, even though there are 9 offerings in this first go around. The first which was an Ardbeg 19-year-old that was unfucking believable.
Absolutely remarkable liquid. Yep.
And it's a small batch of Ardbeg. It is £550 a bottle. There is no getting away from it. It is expensive. If we were just simply going to taste it in a vacuum and say, is it good? Yes, it's exceptional. Yep. Did it fit the character of First Witch? We thought absolutely. Mm-hmm. Really, really wonderful. So we are going to jump into samples 3 and 4 and see if we can continue this streak, which, I don't know, Joshua. I don't know at all.
You gotta have a better. You have to have a positive mental outlook. So whiskey number 1 seems kind of malt forward.
Oh, and so when you say 1, you mean 3?
Yeah. I'm sorry. So for you, for the listeners, we are tasting samples 3 and 4. I'll try to stick with that nomenclature, but just know that 3 may equal 1 and 2 may equal 4, or 4 may equul 2. You know what I mean? Fucking hell. I haven't even had a sip yet, Jason, and I'm just tossing numbers about. Might be easier
just to say 3 and 4.
Yeah, maybe I'll do that. Yeah, so with whiskey number 3 here, it's very malt forward, and there's a waxy citrusy, a waxy quality and citrusy tone to the nose. It's the alcohol is present. There's no doubt about it. It's not hiding, but it's also not like stabbing me. Like it's saying, you, sir, are smelling a cask strength whiskey, which I like.
I want to revisit the fact that I think we're in big trouble because I think this is absolutely delightful on the nose and has a very pleasing brightness. But as I read over the character descriptions, those opening sentences that we use to such great effect the first time out, I think we're going to be spinning our wheels a few times here. So let me give you some opening sentences so you can start thinking characters and some whiskeys here.
Can I add just one last thought? As I nose this, there's an element to it that makes me think of an older whiskey in the same way when we've had, and this is me throwing a little foie around, when we've had our 50s Glenfarclas or some of our, really old, well-aged Glen Grants here and there, there's an oakiness that verges on eucalyptus or mint that has this elegant, soft, silky quality to it. And I get a sense of that this could potentially have a bit of age to it. Potentially. So without giving away too much of the game, because you have been a very good boy and you have not done additional research. No.
At my request, just to be clear on that one, of these 8 samples, of which we have tasted 2, which leaves us 6 samples.
That's my math, yeah.
4 of the 6 samples are 31 years old.
So there you go. All right. So, okay. That is, wow, 4 of them are 31 years old. Okay, so.
Remember when I said we were in a little bit of trouble and you said, come on, buck up that mental attitude? That was the information that I had at my fingertips. Where I was like, oh, now it's going to get tough. So here's the characters, right? And again, the good news is we were reading all 8 the last time. We're down to 6 this time.
Okay.
So we have got Lady Macduff, opening sentence. A gentleness of manner and vulnerability is what you find on first acquaintance. Here comes Menteith. Maturity brings forth a relaxed air. Here's Angus. Quietness can be an asset. Here's First Ghost. Dismissed too easily. The eyes move away, daring to doubt the spirit.
And the ghost ones, those are the whiskeys from shuttered distilleries.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
Correct. And then closing out with Bloody Sergeant. The rough hemp of the tunic stiffened with clotted blood. The wearied walk through the thickened glower of autumn woods. That's not sample number 3. We have found our first character to eliminate.
Yeah, I don't think it's sample number 3, and I've nosed sample number 4, and I would minus that. What was the last bit on the Bloody Sergeant?
Glower of autumn woods.
So on sample number 4, I get a hint of that autumnal hint to it, but everything prior, which is like blood-soaked, blah blah, whatever. No. So I don't mean to say that to Dave Broom's notes, but it doesn't fit.
So here's the rest of the sentence. Okay. Surviving on a diet of acorns and stewed tea.
Yeah, right? That's not going to be it. No.
I think for this round with samples 3 and 4, we can rule out the Bloody Sergeant.
You're only meant to rule out the Bloody Sergeant. Right,
we also have the First Murderer. I overlooked the First Murderer.
Okay.
Pallid with a reek of wood smoke and tallow candles.
Okay. What's pallid? What's pallid mean?
Pallid.
Is it like a paladin? It's like a 12th level paladin with like a 17 charisma. He may have a Vorpal sword and just like plate armor.
I had a better job knowing what pallid meant before you started talking about whatever you just talked about. Pallid is pale, kind of washed out.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that makes good sense. Oh, okay. So read that again then.
Pallid with a reek of wood smoke and tallow candles, salt sweat on the brow, lean-shanked yet muscular, downtrodden, dismissed and angry. A denizen of the darkest taverns.
Yeah.
For a few coins, as night falls, a throat will feel its bite. A child will die. Money runs thicker than blood.
I think I'd rule that out for both of these. There's an elegance to both of them, like when we have a dirty whiskey, we're like, oh, that's filthy, right? And I think like First Murderer, The Bloody Sergeant, like I'm not getting any really good bad guy feel to this. You know what I mean? There's an austere quality. There's a gentle quality to both of them. Now, I haven't sipped any of this. It looks like you've had a couple sips here and there.
I have.
Yeah.
I have. I am presently torn. So here's the rest of Lady Macduff for you. A gentleness of manner and vulnerability is what you find on first acquaintance. At home among spring orchards and drifts of honeysuckle, the troubled world seemingly unknown. But there are deeper layers to test you, a firmness of resolve, a steel at the heart. The tongue may seem sweet, but can also be cutting. Do not be deceived. Those are great. Those are great whiskey notes. Those are great Lady Macduff notes. That is beautifully, beautifully said.
Well, sample number 3 has a remarkable palate. Like it is. It over. Does it overload you? It's
no. Not me. If the me was me, no.
No,
if the me is one, I don't have an answer.
It's not over. So here's what's happening, right? On the nose, remember, like for me, it was that soft, gentle oak. It was that citrusy quality. There was an impression that this liquid spent longer in the cask. I'm assuming 31 years old based on the numbers that you gave me earlier. But then when I taste this, the whiskey takes a complete left turn. Not a complete left turn. It takes a left turn. But it's like one of those things, like you've taken a left turn and all of a sudden you are in Times Square. Like all the lights are on, everything's flashing. Like the hints of fruit on the the hints of fruit on the nose went on to full bouquet of fruits on the palate.
I'd be okay with you saying that. The thing that I keep returning to is that each of these samples has significant heft. There's a weightiness to the nose, despite being bright, despite being fruity, right? Listen to this. So that was Lady Macduff that I gave you. Here comes Menteith. Listen here. Maturity brings forth a relaxed air. This is now a life of ermine, the satisfaction of sweet meats and spices, fruits and flowers. Yet for all the damask rose and sandalwood, at the core lurks a hint of smoke. Comfort pushed aside and darkness embraced. The muscles flex anew, power grows. It will act. That's not number 3, is it?
That is not number 3. Can you... Oh, wow. Number 4 is doing something to my palate that I've experienced in a more dramatic way previously, and you have too. It's this build of spice on the finish that reminds me a bit of Tor Mordor, right? That classic, was it 1984 bottling by Whiskey Broker? Wow.
Yeah, 4 and 3 are distinct on the palate. I think when you'd said it a moment ago, the fruit and the floral from the nose on sample 3 really come into their own on the palate. Number 4 really goes into this spice root. You know, I don't want to say sandalwood because I just read Sandalwood by Dave Broom, but there's a spice and wood happening on 4. So let's see. So I think right now, just given that it's at the top of the sheet and we read it for Lady Macduff, I think Lady Macduff is in the driver's seat for sample number 3.
Agreed. Yep.
But we still need to visit Angus, and we maybe have to visit First Ghost. So Angus, the notes say, quietness can be an asset. Those who stand in the shadows are the silent witnesses, messengers ready to do their bidding. Much has been seen, and any sweetness which has been gathered in will be balanced by the darker acts of war plotted under paraffin light. There is spice in the tales told.
Oh, gosh, see? How's he spelling tales?
Tales as in a story.
Yeah.
T-A-L-E-S.
So that's interesting. So, but I think Dave maybe being smart in where he's placing the word tales to make you think of the tail end of that whiskey drinking experience, which is sort of what I'm getting with 4. Like the whole thing builds to a wonderful crescendo from nose to palate to finish to the tail, and on number 4. So I'm thinking man teeth, but this is in the running.
So just to confuse ourselves further, here comes First Ghost.
Okay.
Dismissed too easily, the eyes move away, daring to doubt the spirit. Gold glitters on the helm, the voice soft but persistent, the execution firm. Resist disbelief for sweet reward, or regret will haunt you.
Well, I mean, all of those words make me think he's describing a beguiling spirit, which I would say number 4 is a beguiling spirit. It's kind of reminds me, not directly, but the way that Highland Park talked about their Loki release, where it was, you know, is it doing this? Is it doing that? You know, Loki's the trickster kind of thing. And while I didn't particularly love that whiskey after Thor came out, I can draw similarities between how Highland Park described Loki and how Dave Broom is describing, what was the character again? First Ghost, and how this sample number 4, how that ride has been. It's a bit all over the place, but in a good way.
What do you think about First Ghost descriptor for sample number 3?
So, give it to me one last time.
Dismissed too easily, the eyes move away, daring to doubt the spirit. Gold glitters on the helm, the voice soft but persistent, the execution firm. Resist disbelief for sweet reward, or regret will haunt you.
Yeah, there's a problem with like, it could go to a bunch of things, I guess. Yeah, that one's tough. That's a curveball. It's a curveball because what are they doing? They're each expression is meant to create this wonderfully complex experience, and those descriptors tell that story. So that's going to be a tougher one. I'm still on Lady Macduff for number 3.
I want to commit to that. I think it fits the best.
Who else? Are we missing anybody else?
No. So we've got the 2 we selected in the prior episodes, Satan and First Witch. Mm-hmm. We've essentially ruled out the Bloody Sergeant and the First Murderer. Mm-hmm. So that's brought us down to 4. And of those 4, we've looked at Menteith, Angus, Lady Macduff, and First Ghost. And I just can't help but think number 3 is Lady Macduff. Yeah. Just to read that paragraph again.
One last time, please.
As we taste, a gentleness of manner and vulnerability is what you find on first acquaintance, at home among spring orchards and drifts of honeysuckle, the troubled world seemingly unknown. But there are deeper layers to test you, a firmness of resolve, a steel at the heart. The tongue may seem sweet, but can also be cutting. Do not be deceived.
So I'm going to say 2 things. A, I really do think that this is Lady Macduff. B, this fits my palate so well that I'm not blowing smoke. This is currently in the running for Whiskey of the Year for me. Like, it's ticking the boxes. I'm loving this. I really am.
That's so interesting. I don't know if anything's going to top the Ardbeg 19-year-old First Witch for me.
No, yeah, that's a good point. But yeah, no, that's but right, like we've talked about it before. What's my favorite SCN bottling is a fruity, spicy Daluane, right? No peat, right? So anyway,
yeah, I tell you, as I finished up those notes and felt quite convinced by our selection, I took a longer taste of it and filled my mouth with more liquid than I had previously, and got it quite spicy through the mid palate and through the close, which could be a steel at the heart, right? That might also be the tongue may seem sweet, but also can be cutting, right? But it also still has me looking at Menteith, which is maturity brings forth a relaxed air. This is now a life of ermine, the satisfaction of sweet meats and spice. Yeah.
See, that's...
I don't find that as much up front, right?
No. There's no sweet meats. There's no sweet meats in 3. And 4 has that heft. I want to say that there's a bit of sherry cask maturation in here.
For sure, yeah. Right? Yeah, it's a little bit darker in color. A little deeper color to it,
and there's a meatiness to it.
Well, and Menteith continues, yet for all the damask rose and sandalwood, at the core lurks a hint of smoke, and number 3 has no smoke anywhere near. Anywhere near. All right, so let's commit to Lady Macduff for number 3. Now let's see what that leaves us for sample number 4.
Okay.
Which would give us Menteith, First Ghost, or Angus.
So we've read Menteith a few times now. Can you just remind us what First Ghost is? And then
First Ghost is the one that I keep reading like poetry here. Dismissed too easily, the eyes move away, daring to doubt the spirit.
Blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
Not number 4.
No,
not number 4.
No.
So that gives us Menteith and Angus. So Angus, quietness can be an asset, which the nose isn't quiet at all. So
nothing about
those
this
who
is
stand right. Those who stand in the shadows are the silent witnesses, messengers ready to do their bidding. Much has been seen, and any sweetness which has been gathered in will be balanced by the darker acts of war plotted under paraffin light. there is spice in the tales told. Can 4 be anyone other than Menteith?
I don't think 4 can be anyone other than Menteith. Wait, why did we say no to the Bloody Sergeant again?
Because it was, let me go back down here. Bloody Sergeant, the rough hemp of the tunic stiffened with clotted blood, the wearied walk through the thickened glower of autumn woods, surviving on a diet of acorns and stewed tea, a solid and trustworthy messenger, a worker, a warrior. Not for him the palace, his is a life willingly given to service.
Nah, that's not it. That's not it at all.
I don't think so. Let's double check. Let's make sure we're not. Maturity brings forth a relaxed air. This is now a life of ermine, the satisfaction of sweetmeats and spices, fruits and flowers. Yet for all the damask rose and sandalwood, at the core lurks a hint of smoke. Comfort pushed aside and darkness embraced. The muscles flex anew. Power grows, it will act.
This sample number 4 has a floral component that comes out on the finish, which really.
And after that experience, if you go to the nose, you can find it in a corner of the nose as well.
Yeah, I think we're looking at Lady Macduff and Menteith for 3 and respectively 4.
All right.
Oh, Jason, this is it. Do you? Oh, I'm so excited and nervous at the same time.
I think that's a good way to be. Number 3.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I don't like the look on your face. The look on your face tells me we failed.
Number 3 is Lady Macduff.
Hey! All right.
Any guesses on a distillery? You know it is 31 years old, but any guesses on a distillery at that age?
The fruity component seems like a Moorish version, not a Moorish, but a Moorish version of a Glentockers to me.
Ah, you're right. Yeah, right in the wheelhouse.
Right?
Not right, but absolutely right in the wheelhouse. When I tell you what it is, you'll go, I was right in the wheelhouse. It's a 31-year-old Linkwood.
Right in the wheelhouse. There you go. Man, oh man, the Chevets. That's a great whiskey.
Yeah, it's 48.2% alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
It is 1 of 650 bottles.
Okay.
And it is 750 pounds a bottle.
Gosh. Wow. No, I'll tell you, I think that pricing nowadays, that is a fair price.
Right. Here's a bit more information from the website. Casting this role in Livingston's Macbeth series required whiskey maker elixir distillers to find a single malt of rare elegance and beauty. This vatting of 4 ex-bourbon barrels from Linkwood Distillery proves the perfect embodiment of the ill-fated Lady Macduff. The nose shows all the flowers, citrus, and white fruit characteristic of Linkwood, while the palate harbours hidden depths suggestive of its inspiration, strength, and resolve. An exceptionally fine Speyside malt.
Remarkable. Yep, just really.
It's a little cracker.
Really wonderful whiskey. So we're looking at, it's 31 years old, so that's 1992, or is it 91?
To my knowledge, they haven't revealed a year.
Okay, that's all right. Yeah, wonderful. That really is in the running for my whiskey of the year. I love it.
So what gave me pause, Joshua, is we are 3 for 3.
There you go. We're not 4 for 4. We're 3 for 3. Okay.
We are 3 for 4.
Oh, yeah. 3 for 4. Wait. Oh, shit. Okay. God damn it.
See, that's the face I was making. So sample number 4 is Angus.
Read Angus again, then?
Quietness can be an asset. Those who stand in the shadows are the silent witnesses, messengers ready to do their bidding. Much has been seen, and any sweetness which has been gathered in will be balanced by the darker acts of war, plotted under paraffin light. There is spice in the tales told.
But god damn it, didn't I say, is he giving a hint with the use of spice and the word tale as in that being the finish? And I had said the spice on the finish reminded me of Tor Mordor, where it just increases. Shit. All right.
I'd still... I'm really curious. I'm saving the remains of that bottle because I'm curious to put that next to Menteith when the time comes. So Angus. So now that you know that that number 4 is Angus.
Yeah. Do I get to guess?
As we've said all along, it is 31 years old. Do you have a distillery in mind with sample number 4?
The only distillery that's ever had a growing spice in the way that this one does, for me, has been Tormore. And so I'm gonna take a total shot in the dark and say that it's Tormore Distillery. This
vatting of 4 first fill bourbon barrels is a fantastic example of rich, weighty 1990s blank. More than 3 decades in American oak has created a concentrated and full-bodied dram with satisfying notes of panettone, candied peel, and banana. It is 54.6% alcohol, 750 pounds a bottle, and comes from the Glengarry Distillery.
Oh, that's interesting. What year was... okay, so it was 31 years of age, right? So this will have had peated spirit, but Glengarry, like, there was no rhyme or reason to how peated their barley was or was not peated. But there's a note that I've gotten in most peated Glengarrys that I'm not getting here, and it's that fresh jalapeno note. Not the spice from it, but the vegetal sweetness. That's interesting.
Just like sample number 3, take a bigger swig of number 4.
Okay.
And let it coat your palate and go through the finish. Because that spice that we keep talking about reappears or continues to appear on those larger swigs of this.
Yeah, but then there's certain elements that I'm like, that I say, oh yeah, that is Glengarry, right? And now
it's the power of the blind tasting,
right?
isn't it?
Amazing.
Yeah, Angus on that one. Huh. I did not see that coming.
Yeah, it's a great whiskey. It's for me, it's not one of those ones that you just sit down and relax with, but it's one of those ones that you say, it's a bit of a special occasion, and this is just something you have to try because it's going to take you on a bit of a ride. I was expecting some refill sherry in there, weren't you?
Absolutely, yeah. 31 years of first fill bourbon.
Man, this is fun.
So which do you prefer, 31-year-old Linkwood Lady Macduff or 31-year-old Glengarry Angus?
I'm going to say it for a third time now, Jason. Sample number 3, the 31-year-old Linkwood, is currently leading the way in my 2023 Whiskey of the Year.
And you're putting it over First Witch, 19-year-old Ardbeg.
Well, I'd need to revisit it, but
Elixir has our address for sending full bottles, right?
I sure hope so, man. Yeah, no, listen. So here is what I'll tell you. Here is what I will say. That Ardbeg was remarkable. I hate point systems. You know I hate point systems. But if I were to throw a 98 at it, it would be deserving of that 98. There's no doubt about it. When I think about the whiskeys that I reach for the most, it's those whiskeys that are spirit-driven and fruity. Mm-hmm. And I would argue that this Linkwood ticks both the boxes of being spirit-driven and incredibly fruity. And, here's the other thing I'll say, third thing that I'll say. That Ardbeg may have been the best Ardbeg I've had since Roller Coaster.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, right?
For sure.
So, and that's a 2008 bottle. Not to say bad things about Ardbeg, but for my palate, 14 years ago, 15 years ago, I had Roller Coaster, and now I had this. So, there you go.
All right. Here endeth the blind tasting, with us being one of two today. 2 of 2, first time, 1 of 2 this time. Tune in next time to see if we can get back on stride or if this is the beginning of the end. I will say this, Joshua.
Yeah.
I came in a little nervous Nelly, a little bit not so sure here. I love that Lady Macduff was a home run. Like, that was a place where we didn't think there was room for doubt.
Yeah, there was. We felt very comfortable. Yep.
Right. I'm a little disappointed that our confidence in Menteith turned into bloody Angus.
But what I would say there, Jason, is I think that's a peek behind the Dave Broom curtain. I really believe that the word tales, as in a tale to be told, yet using that word toward the end of the descriptor, was a hint at the finish being spicy, because it said tales of spice and so on and so forth. So I think we need to pay a bit more attention to some of the hints that Dave is dropping. He normally drops mics, but in this case he's dropping hints.
And the next time he picks up a One Nation Under Whiskey mic, we can ask him whether he meant all the hints that you're picking up on, or whether this is you playing the record backwards.
Which I have a new record player, by the way. So,
hey!
Did I tell you that? You were gone for Father's Day, weren't you? Oh no! You were doing fatherly duties.
I saw you. You and I were together on Father's Day.
Yes, we were.
That was the closing Sunday of Zev's bar mitzvah weekend.
Yeah, for Father's Day, Haida and the girls got me a new turntable and an amp, and now we have a record player in our living room, and Haida and I have just started hanging out in our living room, listening to records. Awesome.
There you go.
Awesome.
Smoking bongs and eating brownies.
Doing bong rips. Fucking eating fucking dum-dums or King Kongs or ding-dongs.
Takis are the way to go.
Takis are the way to go. So listen, we don't have any emails today, and we didn't have any news today, but we did have emails come in, and we'll get to them at another point. But if you would like to send us an email, which we will get to, I promise, this was just a slightly longer episode because we had a bit of a catch-up. I urge you to write in questions at One Nation Under Whiskey, whiskey spelled without an E, of course, and ended in .com, of course. Or you can reach us at info@singlecasknation.com. And we'd love to hear from you. The other thing that I'd like to say is, as we were closing this out, I was checking Apple Padcasts app to see if we'd got any more stars or got any more reviews, like written reviews. And while we have another star, we don't have another written review. So go ahead, give us some stars. 5 is preferable. Leave a review, and we will announce it. We will read it here on Wax.
On Wax. Yeah, I appreciate that additional star coming in. You said we've got an additional star, like someone gave us a 1-star review, or we've got an additional
just another review that another review that was just stars. I think that it may have been a star-bellied Sneech who left the review. I could be wrong.
Gosh, we'll have to do further research. Oh, wait a second. We don't do further research. We will never know. We will never, ever know.
Ever.
But this has been a blast, man. I missed the last episode. Like I say, I'm glad I was the interview in it, at least. Mm-hmm. And it's good to be back today, tasting. 2 more samples in the books. Maybe let's endeavour to get Jess into the next round of sample tasting here and lay her Macbeth knowledge on the line as well.
That's a good point. And to be honest, we've been wanting to get Jess and Swedescott on for the podcast for a very special conversation. So maybe you'll hear the 4 of us. Before too long.
Oh yeah! Oh, I love that idea.
Yeah.
Production meeting live at the end of today's episode.
All right, Jason.
Yes, Joshua.
I raise my glass to you. I raise my glass to the listeners. To Bikram Singh for being the wonderful human that he is, the wonderful guest that he is, and our friends at Elixir Distillers for sending us these samples. I mean, you nailed it. These are 750-pound bottles. They really don't have to send samples out to anyone, but they did to us, and we were welcome to talk shit about them if we wanted to, but here we are, 4 in, 4 great whiskeys, so can't go wrong.
Yeah, hard to argue when you've got a 12-year-old Ardmore, a 19-year-old Ardbeg, a 31-year-old Linkwood, and a 31-year-old Glengarry. I, sir, am a happy padcaster this day.
Ditto. Cheers, Jason.
Cheers, all.
Welcome back to America.
Cheers, Joshua. Thank you. I never left.